Hello, everyone. We're going to call the Legislative Oversight Commission on Education Accountability to order. And we've had a silent roll call, and we do have a quorum. So next on the agenda is item number 3, which is approval of the minutes from the meeting of September 11, 22. I recognize Senator Roland Roberts for a motion.
I move that we accept the minutes from September 11, 2022 meeting.
Senator moves to accept the minutes. Any additions, deletions, corrections? All right, Chair hears none. All in favor, aye. All opposed, nay. Ayes appear to have it. Ayes do have it. Next, we have item 4, report on the status of the transformative system of support for early literacy. Code 182E10, Sonia White, Teaching and Learning Officer of the West Virginia Department of Education. Ms. White, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, everyone. You have before you the report for the transformative system for early literacy. And at this time, I'd like to share a few of the highlights from the report. On pages 2 and 3, you can find our overview of the campaign for
Excuse
grade.
me, Ms. White.
Yes,
Could you speak a little louder?
sure.
Thank
Okay.
you.
You told me to get closer to the microphone and I'm still afraid of him a little bit, but yes. So on pages 2 and 3, we have an overview of the campaign for grade level reading. So this includes the 4 tenets of that campaign, which is school readiness, school attendance, extended day and extended year learning, and high quality classroom instruction. And as with any educational program, family engagement is also important. At the bottom of page 2, you have a list of our partners who we work with to promote literacy in the early grades and prior to school. Page 3, we have a chronological list of our major events that have happened during the last 7 years of this campaign. And so those are listed there. And at the bottom of page 3, we started a second longitudinal study, but due to a small cell size and our how well our pre-K and K programs are now well established in the state, we are not going to continue the study after the conclusion of this year, and it will focus our efforts on the other grades 1 through 5. On pages 4 and 5, we have the breakdown of the funding allocations for the Leaders of Literacy campaign for grade level reading. As you can see, 53% of those funds go directly to counties as part of their county allocation. 10% this past year went to fund the last year of the study I just mentioned, and the remaining 37% went to fund targeted projects. Some of those projects include the June Harless Center. We have reading specialists there who work across the state. Each of them are assigned a specific region of the state. We've divided into 6 pieces. And in addition to those, we have 3 that work directly with counties with 1st and 2nd grade teachers at identified schools. And those are currently serving in Upshur, Braxton, and I'm going to forget the 3rd county. I'll come back to it. Hardy County. I knew there was 2 in the middle and 1 over on the Eastern Panhandle in Hardy County. So we work with those, and then we also provide professional learning for teachers, and we provide a literacy screener, PALS, for counties that need that to screen students for literacy pieces. The county allocations, those are submitted to the counties, and they use those to provide a variety of things to their local districts. Those can include extra teachers or specialists in their county to replenish school libraries, teacher professional development, and other needs that the counties may have that are unique to their local districts. On page 6, we talk about our support for early literacy and school readiness. So that's getting our youngest ready for school. And the reason this is so important, we partner with DHHR and Birth to 3 and some others to ensure that our children from the onset are being exposed to literacy, because what we have found is that students from low-income families have heard as 30 million words less than their counterparts in a middle income family. So it does have an effect on their vocabulary and their exposure to language. Part of the pieces we use to work with this is we have our Ready, Set, Go program, which is a way to connect families to all of the different services from birth to the time they start school, and help them find the pieces that they need in their community. We also have our universal pre-K program is listed there. And again, West Virginia continues to lead the way nationally with our universal pre-K program. Currently, this year, we have 66% of our kindergartners attended preschool prior to starting kindergarten this past year. And that number varies a little bit because due to COVID and other things, fewer students went to preschool the previous year. So when you do that math, it looks like fewer students did, but typically we're between 70 and 75% of our 4-year-olds participating in universal pre-K. We also serve 3-year-olds who have special needs in our pre-K program. The National Institute for Early Education Research ranks us with 9 of the 10 quality benchmarks, and I would say my staff argues that we have 9.5 of the quality benchmarks, because the 10th benchmark deals with professional development hours, which we meet, and also with a coaching component, which we do not have because it doesn't fit with what we offer at this point. But so 9 out of 10, and we're ranked 6th in the nation for access to 4-year-old pre-K. And what's unique about our pre-K programs is it not only offered at our public schools, it's also offered with collaborative agencies such as daycares around the state. So when parents go to West Virginia to find my pre-K, they are not only given the local schools in their area, but they're also given the daycares and the Head Start programs that collaborate with us and provide preschool services to our children here in West Virginia. Page 8 and 9 deal with our Imagination Library, which is another way we talk about spoken words to children before they enter school, but they also need to be exposed to print and to reading. And this August, Dolly Parton came to West Virginia for an evening to celebrate West Virginia being the 11th state to offer the Imagination Library to all of our children in the entire state. So that means from the time a child is born until the age of 5, they will receive, when the parents sign up for it, they will receive a book a month. So they get a total of 60 books by the time they start kindergarten, and they're sent free of charge. And we appreciate the legislature's continued support of this project. $350,000 is allocated for this annually. These are given again to all of our children, regardless of income status. And that's not true in all of the states that participate. So over 12 months, we give a little over 500,000 books to students in the state of West Virginia. Currently, 52%, a little over 52% of our birth to 5-year-olds in the state of West Virginia receive books from the Dolly Parton Imagination Library. So we are thankful to continue to be a part of this partnership. And our June Harless Center at Marshall University also helps us with many of the fundraising and support to make this a reality for the children. Pages 10 and 11 discuss other components of our campaign for grade level reading, which is chronic absenteeism and promoting positive attendance habits and summer and extended learning. So again, we work across the department to address the needs of students and to try to help schools and counties deal with chronic absenteeism problems in our younger grades especially. For summer learning, this is our 2nd year. This past summer for the Summer Soul program, which is $32 million from the ESSER relief money that was given to counties to offer rigorous summer programs, including many times for the first time, transportation and meals. We have a report. The previous year, we were able to show that most of the students who attended summer learning programs at their schools did not have the summer learning loss they typically had, and many, because the counties gave pre and post tests at the beginning and the end of the summer, many of our students improved over that time. We will have our final report for the 2022 summer in the next few months. On pages 12 and 13, we want to talk about promoting high quality pre-K through grade 3 classroom instruction. And for several years, we have focused on and researched our pre-K and K programs. And again, those are well established in the state. It's no longer something new. It's something we've done for many years and we're doing well. So we're shifting our concentrated efforts and our focus on the 1st through 3rd grade and beyond 4th and 5th grade, so that we can ensure a consistent, reliable instruction for students in reading in the science of reading, which includes phonics, phonemic awareness, vocabulary, fluency, and comprehension, in addition to, and plus writing always. So on page 13 are the percent proficient from the West Virginia General Summative Assessment for the spring of 2022 for our 3rd grades by county. We are not back to our pre-pandemic levels, but we are moved in the right direction. So in 2021, we had a significant dip, and then this past year, we're moving back in the right direction. And our hope is, as we work with counties and counties work with their local schools, that we continue to reverse that trend. Finally, on the last 2 pages, we have some of the things that we are continuing to do, as well as some new things that we've added. So again, we're going to continue to provide professional learning and technical assistance for all of our high quality programs focused on the science of reading. We are going to make available. We had during the pandemic, when everyone was shut down, our June Harless researchers worked on our phonics and word recognition resources to update them. And we have these ready to go, and we're excited about that because many counties are reaching out to us and stating that they need additional support with phonics. So this is a structured methodology that is 15 lessons per sound thing that you learn to make in phonics. And we're really excited to roll those out because I think it'll provide the teachers with some structured and consistent across the state support to help them with teaching phonics. And in addition, we also, our June Harless and our coordinators at the department, we feel it's important that they continue to learn so that they're providing the best instruction in the science of reading and are up with current research and best practices in that area. So at this time, if you have any questions or comments, I'll be glad to take them.
All right. Thank you, Ms. White. Any questions for Ms. White? Senator Azinger?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm curious, thank you for coming, by the way. The books that are sent through the Imagination Library, I went online trying to find, what kind of books are they? Which books are they? Who chooses? I'm just curious what the
I know
books are.
they're usually children's books that are read along. I know the first book that every child gets is The Little Engine That Could, because that was Dolly's favorite growing up, and she wants kids to realize that they can achieve anything. So she starts with that book. But there's a committee at the Imagination Library Foundation that chooses the books, and I've not had any complaints about any of those books or from parents or whatever. So we monitor what they're sending. So.
Yeah, I'm just curious of, the philosophy of the books and,
I can get you information on that if you
could you do that? I'd
Yes.
appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Boy, this thing's loud. Further questions? It's kind of like a Tony kicking the table. Yeah. No other questions? I guess I'm gonna ask a few questions then, unless anyone else has something to start with. Sonia, clarify something for me here,
Sure.
if you would. On page 4, you have, it was about $5.7 million annual allocation award. That's in the the school aid plan, correct? That's allocated to the state board to allocate out to the counties.
I don't know if it's part of, look to see it, but this is money that's set aside just for early learning. is
Right.
my
I think
understanding.
it was a line item that's in the
Yes.
state aid formula. Most of that goes from the pre-K. Is that pretty much pre-K is what you're saying? Or
well,
utilized for K through 3 also?
it's for pre-K through 3.
Through 3,
Mhm.
okay. So you have 53% goes directly to counties. Specifically, so about $3 million is what you had down here total to the counties. Specifically, what is that money going to, is being utilized for?
For counties, and
Yes.
the counties, they have some parameters, but generally, they use it if they want to hire an additional reading specialist for a school. If they want to buy materials for their school that related to reading, they can use it for professional development sessions for their teachers related to reading, and any other needs they have related to reading. And
My understanding was it also went to things like transportation, things like that too. Was it a bulk of that, or is that separate?
do you mean like transportation for kids?
For pre-K, for the pre-K part, things like that for kids?
I'm not sure. I don't know
Okay.
that, but I can find out.
All right. Thank you. What about, so how, is there any percentage that goes directly toward the screening of these children and then the particular interventions that are needed from K to 3?
Yes, there are two, we provide at the department, right now we use a screener called PALS. And it's made available to the counties if they choose to use it. It's free for them to purchase up through 3rd grade. If they want to use it for upper grades, they would use their own funding to do that. But that is available to them. Some counties use it. I think we have about 35 counties that use it. And the remaining counties have other things that they use that are already in place that they've used for many years for their screeners.
So are all the counties utilizing this type of thing here, the screening?
Yes,
Okay.
they should be.
So they should be.
Yes.
Do you have data on that, or? just
We
giving us
have some
approximate?
data that they provide us data on what screeners they're using.
Okay, so when they screen these children, particularly in the pre-K part, is that being transformed over to the from K to kindergarten? So they already have what interventions they need to do at that age?
What we do in preschool, generally when students enter preschool, they go through a screening, speech and language and some kind of like an orientation.
So
type
you're
thing.
identifying any deficits or any
Yes.
strengths?
And then 3 times a year, we have an early learning reporting system where they report on teachers look at individual students and their progress as they're making in different areas. And the screeners are used to measure things like phonological awareness, and counties may administer those typically beginning, middle, and end of year. Or if a student is showing difficulty, they might be in a tiered system of support where they're going to get a level 2 or level 3 support, depending on if they're making progress. And at that point, they may screen more often,
Okay, and
every
this
2
is
to
for,
3 weeks.
these are for all the students then?
These are for all the students.
Okay.
Yeah. And then if they're showing difficulty, we,
So there's,
provide intensive support. Yeah.
so each of the years from K to 3, they're supposed to be doing this other screening or saying, yes, everything is okay.
Yes.
Or if there is a problem, then they would provide intervention.
Yes.
That's what we're,
That's-
okay.
That's our tiered system of support. Yes.
Okay, and has that, in your opinion, is, well, I shouldn't say for your opinion. Are you aware, is it effective or has it been effective? Or are there things we have to do so that this could be effective?
There's always room for improvement. I think some counties do a better job than others, and maybe are a little more systematic about it. But we know what the best practices are, and I think that's our job, is to make sure that we share with them the best practices and strongly encourage them to use those.
And that's where I was expecting you to go. Do we have any breakdown as far as maybe which ones are not acting as efficient as we would like them to be?
Um,
And then I guess the next part would be related to how the numbers that you have on page 13 may be playing out. Do we see any comparisons to the level of interventions to what the results are?
You know, because counties use multiple intervention tools and screeners, you know, we have data that they're using them. Counties, because they're locally controlled, you know, usually do that. And we do, what I do usually do and what we do at the department is we notice the counties who are successful and we ask them, what are you doing? What are your best practices? And from that, in general, we glean that they use one thing. They don't have multiple things they're doing. They focus on one approach, or they use one particular tool, and that there's a shared understanding of the language and the expectations. And then there's follow-up and leadership at the school level and at the county level to make sure what was asked to be implemented is actually being implemented. So that's what we see in our successful counties, or our counties that are performing well.
All right. All right, I'm going to stop at that point. Delegate Tony, you have questions?
Okay, I'm actually going to go off the same page. You're talking about y'all use PALs and they have opportunity to use the screeners. So they can elect not to use what you all have as PALs and they can do with what they wish, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so is the counties required to have every student screened?
Well, it depends on what you're screening for. Is it best practice, or are they in kindergarten and in preschool, they're required to evaluate, you know, screen a student with something 3 times a year. In the other grades, most schools and systems benchmark 3 times a year to see where the students are, and provide screeners to just, especially if they see they're having difficulty, they'll screen students, but then they'll also, if they're having difficulty, use those tools more often to see if they're making progress.
So they can use those tools, but they're not required to?
I'm not sure if I can answer that completely for each county, but they do it. They're required what's in state code to do, and you know, it's to provide, you know, to screen students, and
So they're
they seem
required,
to be doing that.
they're required once in state code to screen students in each grade or a certain grade, or?
I don't have state code in front of me, so I can't answer that right now, but I can definitely get back to you with that.
Okay. And going back to the last page on 14. Let me find it. Says continue efforts with academic coaches and support staff, elementary principals and others who directly early in elementary education. Do we have data on how many counties actually have academic coaches?
We do. We can probably pull that data from our full-time employee, but so I can get that to you as well. I would like to add, it's not part of this report, is we had a competitive grant in the spring that allocated an additional $2 million, and we had well over 25 counties apply to that to hire additional coaches or instructional aides in the classroom or specialists to help with 1st and 2nd grade reading and math.
Are the instructional coaches, I know they're in state code, but are they just getting resources for the teachers? Or are they actually going into classroom too?
Yes, they're doing both.
Okay.
A good instructional coach, and we, through the Harless Center, we have a coaching academy so that annually, especially the first 3 years that they're instructional coaches, we provide them with professional development and help them understand 2 things: the content of what we need them to coach. So we make sure they're well-versed in the science of reading, or in some cases mathematics, but that they're also given the tools of how to be an effective coach, how to go into a classroom and work with a teacher and to model. You know, sometimes they go in and they provide the teachers with materials. Other times they go in and observe a teacher's classroom and provide feedback, or you know, they go in and teach a lesson and have the teacher observe. So coaches that was one of my favorite jobs as an educator. So
Do we have data that, like, versus an elementary school that doesn't have a coach and versus one that does?
we have some preliminary data from some of our counties use their ESSER money to hire coaches and instructional aides and such for for their school systems, and the preliminary data is showing that it is helpful and it is beneficial.
Okay, and the instructional support pilot project that you mentioned, how long has that been going on? How long is the pilot project projected?
Okay, the instructional support pilot, which one I just?
The instructional support specialist pilot project.
Okay.
That's, I think it's Braxton, Hardy and Upshur.
Okay, this is their second year.
How-
So we put 3 in those counties. We had funding to do additional ones, but we didn't have anyone take us up on that. So we put them in, this is their second year. They reported out last spring to us, the instructional specialist, and they've went into schools and built relationships with the teachers. The teachers are looking at their standards. They're looking at how they're teaching. So they're becoming better at their craft. And we've seen some improvement in those schools.
So no other county applied for it?
No, sir.
Okay, and also you've got West Virginia tiered system of support assist districts with implementation. Is that already currently going?
Yes, that's been going on for many years. And that's just basically that's where the screening tools come into play. You look at all of our students in a classroom and you start to notice students that are struggling. So they go to a tier 2, and that means they get some additional support. So at an elementary school, it might be an intervention block where they're working with a reading teacher, or they're working with a teacher and some other students that have similar difficulties in reading, and they work with them. And then tier 3 is if they're not showing progress after the intentional support, then we do some more intensive support. And then, at that time, the teachers, the parents meet and decide if there's other things that we can provide for those students if they continue to struggle, such as, special education is one option that sometimes leads to, not always.
Does all the counties participate in this?
Yes.
Okay. And just the last comment I have is about the summer soul. I know now we have money going to it. I know it's helped in my county being able to provide transportation and the food service to get more students actually going to the summer school. Thank you.
Right. Thank you.
Further questions? Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here. Were you in the Education Committee meeting yesterday?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I thought you were. I'm really confused that the Department of Education is giving us 2 different messages in 2 different days. Yesterday, our meeting was all about early childhood literacy for math and reading, and the needs that we had and the suggestions that we need to start having coaches. Now, today, you're coming in and you're saying that there's $5.7 million being spent for the pre-K through 3 programming that are, and it's listed here with those very things. Can you give us some sort of an explanation? And the superintendent of schools, spoke quite a lot yesterday about the needs where assessments weren't done and all of this, but this is saying that assessments are being done. So can you just kind of straighten this mess out, please?
I think both. We're presenting you for this particular pot of funding, what's happening, and it's not enough. I mean, quite frankly, we need to make sure that we are reaching all of our schools. And for this report, this is what's going on, but it doesn't begin to cover what we need. We have so many new teachers. We have so many things that aren't adequately addressed. And we do need additional coaches, and we do need additional support for our students.
That was not the message that's been given. So you just changed the message. I'm sorry.
Well,
But it is. Okay,
I did not, my intention was not to contradict the state superintendent of schools.
okay. I'm sure of that, but that's what's happening. So we have the 53% of that funding is going directly to counties, and all
Yes.
55 counties do their own thing because we call it local control.
Yes, sir.
But we're all over the board with what works, what doesn't work. And what is your perception of the Department of Education's role then, the state Department of Education, when it comes to all of these counties that are failing, which are all over the place, and the ones that maybe are doing better? How do you reconcile this thing? Does it happen from you, or do we just continue to have 55 different, systems?
Well, and I think that's what the superintendent was trying to get across yesterday, is that we need some consistency across the state with what we're doing with coaching and teachers and making sure they're trained properly. And I think we need to find the right balance. There are some things that maybe we all as a state need to do consistently in the same way, and then at the same time allow local districts and schools to have some freedom with the other components of the learning in the school.
So you said you're going to eliminate the program with pre-K in the assessments?
No, sir. I
Okay.
said we are not continuing a study. We did a long-term study previously and for 5 years, and we started a second study, but we decided that we were not going to continue that because we knew that study said what we're doing in pre-K and K is working, but it's not bubbling up as they make it to third grade. So obviously we need to focus on what's going on in first, second, and third grade so that we can continue to gain on the progress made in our pre-K and K programs.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Sonia, I'm gonna add to what Senator Roberts was just asking and back to what I was going over before. Now, this isn't directed at you. You're the person that's there reporting to us. So don't take this personally.
Okay.
But yeah, I have the confusion too, because last year when we brought up this part about early childhood literacy, and then we wanted to add the numeracy to that,
Mhm.
Drew McClanahan talked to us and he said that these assessments were not being done at many places and that some of the interventions were, and he brought exactly what you just told us was the plan to start doing that.
Right.
But if we've been doing this, and then again, what the superintendent said yesterday, his plan, he had a detailed plan. We want to do each of these things. And that was what we had outlined in our legislation last year that we wanted to move.
Mhm.
So my question to you then is, if this has already been implemented, and here we were trying to intervene to try to improve the outcomes for these children, if it's not working already, where are we going to go with this? And I don't look at it as just adding more funding to something, because we're already paying more per capita per student in this state than other states. I mean, there's a finite amount of resources. The second part, you just mentioned the teaching for the teachers, the educators, as far as the planning for them and instruct them. I mean, I've had discussions before with different educators, with Dale Lee particularly. He guarantees me that all of those educators are highly trained. I mean, we've had those discussions when we're looking at alternative pathways for licensure so that we could have other people that had specialization in certain things that could help out with our shortages. If they're already highly trained, why aren't they getting this type of training? I mean, if they don't know how to take care of these kids, to identify them, to screen them, I mean, where are we going wrong? I mean, that's what's, from our standpoint, from a legislative standpoint, we're confused. We're trying to provide the resources, the funding, and the tools. I guess the number of questions there. Try to
There are a
shed some
number
light
of
on it.
questions there. As an I will, since this is the early learning report, I will speak to the elementary component. You know, our elementary educators are asked to know a little bit about everything. They're the math teacher, they're the reading teacher, they're the science and the social studies teacher. And it is in legislation that, you know, in the college programs, they're to have 9 hours of the science of reading. I'm just not sure there's theory and practice. And I think what we need to do is ensure that everything is lining up, but at the same time is teaching, much like other professions, you need to get better. And sometimes you need additional support and additional training to help with that, because looking back on a 30-some-year career in education, I think I didn't know everything my first year, but that didn't stop me from learning. And to improve your craft as an educator, you always need to be learning, and you always need to make sure we're doing things. And our teachers come from different backgrounds. So what we hope to do is, what Superintendent Roach indicated, is have teams come from the schools and work together so that they're all speaking the same language. They're all have a unified approach moving forward and a plan. And sometimes we need to do that by helping them, providing additional information and additional support to improve ultimately student learning.
Agreement with that as you do more things, you learn more, you get better at it, and there's more experience. But there should be a basic level of competency to be able to identify these things. I mean, in my profession, I couldn't go out and start doing hysterectomies or C-sections without knowing how to do it. Yes, I can get better with technique as I go on, but I have to have that basic skill and know how to do that to start. Otherwise, they don't let me do that in my profession.
Yes, and all of our teachers are required to pass exams to show that, to demonstrate that level of proficiency as they exit college.
But are you saying that they're not qualified enough to identify these early childhood deficiencies, or?
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that we just,
I mean, especially if they have like a mentor support that's been there for a while,
right.
I would imagine that would be their go-to to say, what do you think about this child or these other children here as far as what their level is, and have that. I mean, I would imagine there would be cooperation there or
Yes,
consultation with them.
And again, it varies, as children in the classroom vary, or how schools are ran, and how the organizational structure is supportive or consistent across the state, varies. And so one school may have a strength in supporting and nurturing their new teachers, and another school may not, or needs additional support doing that.
All right. Well, when we get to the tiered system of support, if they're already implementing that, where does it go from there? Is it just referral, or is it actually we're doing something to help with these children? Are we getting them into summer programs? Are we doing this stuff after school or extra work? Or is it just no cooperation? It's just, we have this, we refer it, and then it goes nowhere.
No, the tiered system of support is implemented. And again, it's meant to, I mean, when I was a principal and we had our monthly meetings about how students were doing, and they would typically move up and down the tiers depending on what was happening. So if they started improving, we would put them back in level 1 where they didn't need that additional support. Or if they continued to struggle, we would move them up to level 3, and maybe they would improve, and we could, take back some of that. So, the goal is to help students get where they need to be. But we also need to realize, students are coming to school with language deficits from day one, where they've not been exposed to written or spoken language in their early ages. And so in addition to trying to keep them on grade level, we're playing catch up with many children.
Well, understandable, but isn't that to get them up to that level? I mean, we're going backwards when you look at our numbers, especially with the last report that we got. I mean, obviously something's not working. I mean, what things we're asking the experts? What things do we have to do to get them to learn? Or to get them up to that level? I mean, we can't legislate that. I mean,
I understand. Again, I think we need consistency. When we go out to the schools to provide assistance, this school is using one program, this one's using another, and we can't be experts in all of those programs, but what we want to do is instill in them the sound pieces, and to make sure that they understand those thoroughly. And so that so that they can take the materials they have and move forward. So,
Okay,
our number one requested,
That's reasonable, but are you saying that they're not doing that? They're not looking at the successful programs and then trying to implement those?
I,
Is that an area we have to intervene at?
it did.
See, we're trying to
Yeah.
leave it up to you guys to figure that out. If you're looking at best practices, that's where you're supposed to communicate from your counties to say, this is what we see is working. You guys should try to look at that.
And that's what we do. But again, counties have some autonomy on what they can do, but we promote best practices. We're provide great details in the science of reading. But we have 55 counties who have varying degrees of, have some choice in how they implement the programs.
I guess the frustrating part is, I mean, if we're not getting them to do the things that we're asking to do, I mean, we just keep throwing the funding at the same thing over and over again and not getting the results. That's the frustrating part. I mean, we don't know how to intervene on that or how to try to get you guys to do that. And I know that's probably frustrating from your standpoint, from the state. All right, I think Senator Roberts has a question.
One more attempt at trying to help, not trying to put you on the spot, honestly.
Okay.
The CSOs, do we not have CSOs for pre-K through 3?
We have content standards and objectives for, we have our standards, West Virginia College and Career Readiness standards for pre-K through 3.
And every single county must identify with those standards that they are teaching those standards. Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so maybe what we should be attacking, and I know my school, we deal with this stuff, scope and sequence, all of
Mhm.
it, and we match everything up for every single day, 180 days, every single year, every grade, every topic of every subject. It's all the way through. It may be that there's something in the CSOs, since that is the common denominator, that I would recommend that the Department of Education dig into and find out why there are so many differences. And it might be that some of those programs that counties are being used from their perspective, they're not meeting the content standards and objectives. They're not getting that done. Because you would agree with me, you've been a principal, teacher, all of that, okay? So isn't it true that if they really are teaching what they're supposed to be teaching with all of the CSOs, then we're going to have literacy and proficiency. Isn't that the goal?
That is the goal. And I think we've kind of took a trail to get to where we need to be. But yes, the content standards are written on grade level for the students. And that could be an issue, that we're relying too much on what our instructional materials say versus what's actually in the content standards that we have. And actually, as we plan for summer professional learning with our teachers this summer and their teams from their school, I surveyed the superintendents and asked them, what are some topics you want us to address this summer? And number 1 and 2 for elementary, middle, and high were content standards, deep dive into the content standards and alignment for math and English language arts. So I think that's our focus. It needs, maybe that's where we're not addressing those as we should in the classrooms or in the schools, or that we need to make sure we have a common understanding of what the expectations are in those standards. And I agree with you.
Okay, thank you. Who's looking over their shoulders to make sure the CSOs are being followed? County superintendents?
Well, it
Principals?
Leadership teams, that sort of
Okay.
thing. As a principal, that was, we as a principal, I led numerous discussions with my staff as how does this progress from how does this mathematical topic or this ELA topic progress from kindergarten to fifth grade? And what the expectations and the standard, were for those standards. And sometimes we had to make adjustments because.
Right. I understand. I live that right now.
Yes, I understand.
Okay. I would certainly encourage for everybody to consider that there is a breakdown in the system of what's happening with CSOs. Because if we have the right content standards and objectives in place to be able to bring a child along, and it's by the time they are tested, they're in third grade, they are not where we have 30% proficiency, then there's either something wrong with the standards or there's something wrong with how those standards are being taught or not taught. There's a breakdown there. That's just my
Right.
final comment.
And,
Thank
and
you.
that's, we've observed that. And in addition to what we're planning to do this past summer, we had online courses for teachers that were self-paced, and we had several hundred enroll just about deep diving into their standards and making sure they understood the expectations at each grade level. So I do a lot of things, just not all of them are in this report.
Ms. White, we're going to probably have to move to the next presenter, but what I would like you to do, if you could, from the state board's perspective, the counties that are enacting these best practices
Mhm.
and those that aren't, if you could probably put that together to let us see which counties and see which ways, how they're performing. Okay, I'd like to have an idea I'm not saying they have to change their ways, but if they're performing well, then we want to give them that autonomy.
Right.
However, if they aren't, we need to probably look at why that is happening. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much. Sorry to put you on the hot seat there.
That's all right. Thank you.
All right, we have next item number 5, report on new safety and security measures and upgrades thereto by the county boards of education. Michael Whitlow, Director of the School Facilities, West Virginia Department of Education. Mr. Whitlow, you have the floor.
Good evening. My name is Sam Polly. I'm School Operations Officer for the Department of Education. The report in front of you actually we're going to kind of tag team that between Mr. Whitlow, our Director of Facilities, and myself. As you're aware, the state code requires counties, to survey the safety and security of their facilities annually. And then the statute requires us at the department, to summarize that data and report that to you annually. And so what you see in front of you, on page 1, we have our introduction, which talks about the survey process that we went through, and then has a copy of the section of statute that requires this report, and also describes the state fund for safety and security that's established in the same section of code. Last year, when we provided this report, we included that safety piece, the funding piece, just kind of as a to close the loop on what's being done, what's not being done, and what the safety and security funding needs are of the counties. However, last year in the report, we had a lot more detail than what you're seeing in front of you. And when we stepped back and looked at it, especially after the Uvalde, Texas school shooting earlier this year, we felt like it was probably not appropriate for us to call out certain county school districts that may have 1 or 2 schools that don't have certain things in place, like safe school entryways, or fencing or card readers and things like that, because we felt that may actually put a school at risk for an active shooter or an intruder that could harm students. So what you're seeing in front of you today is a state level summary on page 2, which describes the county level data at the state summary level. And I will have Mr. Whitlow will describe that information on page 2 in just a few minutes. And then on page 3, we have the statewide safety and security summary level data for what the counties requested. Last year, when we sent the survey out, the total request came in at just over $100 million. And that's just as the counties reported that to us. And I believe when we met in, I believe it was House Education during our budget hearings last year, we had some discussions about that number. There were some figures in that number that were reported that were not really in the spirit of the law, which was safety and security from things like active shooters, intruders, folks that are coming in to harm our students. There were things in that request last year for items such as new roofs for schools, paving. While those do allow for a more safe environment for students, they're not really in what we believe the nature of this statute is. And so when we sent the survey out this year, we actually sent it out in these different buckets that you're seeing on page 3 in front of you. So we asked the counties to report to us how much did they feel was needed for safe school entryways, how much was needed for additional cameras in their schools, for school resource officers, for prevention resource officers, weapon detection systems, safe window and doors, security lighting, security barriers or fencing, and other items. And we asked them to report to us what those other items were so that we didn't have folks trying to hide in those requests things like roofing. And I think we had one school district that reported that they needed funding in last year's request for new water lines in their school. And so we were able to actually go through that funding summary requests from each county and ensure that there aren't things in here that are grossing those numbers up that aren't in the spirit of the statute. We also wanted to summarize this in a way that allowed you all as legislators to see where you may be able to, when you choose to appropriate funds to the Safe School Fund, where you may be able to knock off some things really quick, like the safe school entryways, $87 million total reported there is needed. We felt it was important for you to know where those highest needs were in each category. The total request from the schools this year is a lot larger, as you can see, than it was last year, even though we had items in there last year that were inflating that number to the tune of about $20 million of inflative cost in that last year. The number in front of you now is 247 million. And that will be in our funding request, which is required by statute. We are required to survey the counties and determine what their needs are, and we include that in our funding request. But as you know, that number is subject to appropriation. So it's up to the legislature and the governor to determine what amounts are needed in that school safety fund. We kind of took a hard look at this to determine what could have caused that number to really skyrocket from what it was the year before. And we really believe that it has to do with counties actually taking the survey a lot more seriously this year. They looked at it in light of the Uvalde school shooting and determined that there are things that they could do that maybe they didn't think of in the past, like fencing, safe school entryways. Safe school entryways tends to be the most commonly thought of item that is needed, and then our resource officers as well. But some of the other things like additional cameras beyond those cameras that are needed in the self-contained special needs rooms, weapon detection systems, doors and windows, security lighting, those kind of things weren't really mentioned in the survey last year, but because we asked, counties started to kind of look at, are these things that we need to help our school system have a safer environment for students, safer from active shooters and other outside dangers from coming into our schools. So we really feel counties did a lot larger, put a lot more importance on this request this year than they did last year. But again, when we sent the survey out, we did let them know that, you know, this is subject to appropriation. What they're asking for is not something that they're guaranteed. It's not something that actually they will even get, because the way the funding works is the total amount appropriated to the Safe School Fund is divided equally amongst all the schools throughout the state. That is the way the statute reads. And so you may have a county school system that would potentially ask for, let's just use an outrageous number, $100 million. There were none that steep. But that $100 million just gets spread out evenly across all the counties throughout the state. So they're not going to potentially have funding to fund their entire needs if those needs are just inflated to try to get extra money in the county. Whatever funding is appropriated to the Safe School Fund, that funding does get sent out to the county school boards in a grant award. And those grant awards go out with my name on them, and we monitor those in our Office of School Finance to ensure that those counties are not using those for things that are not in the spirit of the law. So any funding that does go out, we do have monitoring procedures over those funding items. Pages 4 through 28, those are the remaining pages of the report. We go on to list each individual county. The first section under a county heading describes the safety and security measures that were put in place by that school district during the 21-22 school year. So just to take you to the first one, Barber County, their new safety and security measures for 21-22 was they listed as training. The next line is the amount of money that they spent. And so it appears they didn't have to spend any funding additional to provide that training. So they reported no safety and security funding for the 22 school year. But they are requesting approximately $510,000 in safety and security requests. We do have that detail. So if you look through the report and you have some questions, we can get back with you and let you know kind of the breakdown of what each individual county asked for in their total, so we can let you know what that detail was. And with that, I'm going to give the mic over to Michael Whitlow so he can kind of talk about the safety and security page on page 2, and then some of the kind of highlights of the rest of the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam, and good afternoon. As you mentioned, I just want to run through some of the data on the blue and the green charts. One is looking at some of the things they've reported as needing this year. So if looking back, there's 684 schools, so that is generally representative of brick and mortar schools. So there might not be, if a county had some virtual schools and things like that, that doesn't necessarily represent that. This is how the counties have reported that. The counties reported needing 368 safe school entries, which is a little bit less than half. Last year, they reported needing 327. So 41 of them have been completed either by doing a safe school entry or closures or consolidations or new schools. One way or the other, there've been 41 that have been completed. As far as lettering added for 200-foot light conditions for doors and windows, 79 needed that to happen. Last year, 64 needed. That's 15 that were completed. And then lettering on windows for first responders, 183 were needed, and last year 135, so that's 48 that were completed. And then for this year, 43 weapon detection systems that were in place. Last year, there was 53, so 10 were completed. Looking at the resource officer data, last year we just requested or asked about specific resource officer information. This year, due to various requests from like Homeland and police agencies, we also ask about prevention resource officers. So to define what the difference between those two, a prevention resource officer is an actual program that provides educational components and including their security features. And then a resource officer is typically just an officer that's on loan from a county sheriff or a city police. And then overall, the counties felt that they needed 388 resource officers and 347 prevention officers. Just to run through some of the things that were accomplished by counties, some of the highlights, a lot of their money was spent on trainings, assessments, ways to manage door access, camera systems, alert systems such as like Facebook or texting alert systems, stop the bleed kits, window and door cowls similar to what was reported in there. General signage to identify buildings and ways to get around the school. Door replacements, weapon detection systems. The weapon detection systems can either be your traditional metal ones that you would walk through, or cameras that provide that kind of artificial intelligence that identifies weapons. Event security like football games or basketball games or track and field meets. Radios, just general radios across the county where everybody is on the same frequency. Knox boxes, which is a box that's within your school that the fire department or police can quickly access. Certain keys that provide access to like the whole building, like a master key or a fire bib key, or just really important keys that need to be secured. They go to one location to get that. Secure entries, as previously mentioned, and then just general officers, like we had talked. Environmental lighting for the site, indoor barricades, which would be inside classroom doors. A lot of them have emergency keys, but a lot of them don't. So another method would be a barricade that would slide into the grounds, kind of similar like a bolt action type feature. And then more communication systems throughout the building that help everybody stay in touch. I think that's all I have. If anybody has any questions.
First thing I'd like to ask is, I think, Sam, you had mentioned that you can get a breakdown of all these other requests from each of the counties that you have already.
Yes, we do have a breakdown of what each county asked for
Okay.
in their buckets, and then a description of their others.
I think a number of us have already asked that we would like to have that.
Okay.
So we could start looking at these individual counties, particularly our own counties, see where things are going.
Sure.
Okay. You have a request for about 31 million to get school resource officers and prevention resource officers. That would at least have someone there at all times. Is that correct?
That's correct, but I do want to remind you that the statute would divide whatever is appropriated by equally amongst all the schools in the state. So if you see under the number on the page in front of you,
Right.
under the 20 million for the school resource officers, there was only 36 counties that asked for that. And then there were 29 that asked for the prevention resource officer. So essentially, whatever, if the legislature would and the governor would approve 31 million for the school safety fund to try to tackle this, we would need some revised legislation to allow that to be prioritized
Right,
to
right.
those schools.
That would be fine. Okay. So that's where I was going with that. Okay. I'm going to open up questions to other members. Delegate Hannah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just looking at the charts on page 2, full-time SROs, part-time, SROs, just the number of schools that we have. How many hours per week are those full-time SROs and PROs working?
The full-time would be at least 7 hours, 7 to 7.5 hours.
Okay.
Usually it depends on how the counties report their time. Some counties have a 7-hour minimum full-time day, and others have up to an 8-hour day.
Okay. What about the part-times?
The part-time would be whatever half the county's amount would be. So it'd be 3 to 4.
Okay. And then for the full-time PROs, SROs, are they in multiple schools or just one school, or do they transition throughout the day? How's that work?
It could vary across the state. I was previously the treasurer of Boone County Schools, and we had one resource officer in our county. And that one resource officer, while full-time, actually went to the secondary schools. So that resource officer was on a schedule. It was not a posted schedule, obviously, but that one resource officer, while full-time, would not be full-time in a single school. They rotated through the secondary schools.
Good deal. And I'm guessing the part-time, are they one place or do they rotate as well? Be a little harder with that long of a working day, but
It really depends on the needs of the school. If a fight broke out at a school, that resource officer is leaving wherever they're stationed and going to that school.
Okay.
So those kind of things happen as the needs arise, but they're always stationed in a school within the school district if they're full-time.
okay. And are the SROs and PROs, are they armed?
I believe so.
Yes, I believe they are. I know our officer was actually through the through the Boone County Sheriff's Office, and they were certainly armed.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we could go to, page 2. In the lateral column, we gave some numbers, and I'm not sure what they were. Well, thank you.
Okay, anyway, could we go to the lavender boxes on page 2? And you've got some numbers here. You gave some other numbers, which are not down on here, and you did it pretty quickly, and I'm not sure exactly what they meant. So the second box with the 320,700, the ones that do not have man traps, what was the other number you gave, and what does it represent?
So the other numbers were last year's numbers. I apologize if I didn't preface that.
Okay, so so the other number was what?
So last year we needed 368 secure entries, and that number dropped to 327.
Got it. Okay. It sounded like, at least on a couple of them, you were reversing that.
Yeah.
You're saying
apologies
these
if
were
I-
last year's numbers and the higher number was this year's numbers, and it was kind of confusing me.
Yeah, apologies if I reversed those.
All right, thank you. If you could get something out to the committee with those original numbers,
Yeah.
that would be helpful.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a question in the same section, the lavender boxes, it's the fourth one over. The numbers on walls and exterior for first responders, is that not in state code that we have to have them on the windows?
Yes, that is in state code. I believe in 2019 that became law.
So we still have 135 that didn't do it?
Yeah, we still have some work to do. One part of that I came across is as counties, especially using their ESSER and COVID money, if they've done a window and door replacement, the numbers were on there, and then they've done a replacement and those numbers haven't been put back. But there is some work to do as far as getting the message out to get those numbers up where they need to be.
Okay, and on the next box to the left, talking about the 200-foot visibility in low light conditions, what exactly is that? Is that state code too, or what is that?
That is more in the fire code where that comes from. For first responders, where they know where exit doors are in case of a fire or really any emergency.
So you mean like an exterior light at every exit door on the outside?
Every exit door would have a number on it, and it would typically start like door number 1 would be your main entry door, and then go around the school. So that way, as first responders approach, they would know doors. As they're looking at they should have an emergency plan too, that should say what those doors are to kind of assist them where to go.
So by not having that, we're violating the fire code?
There's a portion of that again, we realize there's some work to be done and they need to fix those. And the same scenario as they've replaced doors, they haven't been putting them back. That can also
No.
apply there.
So they have to have numbers there. Are they supposed to be illuminated or just number posted on the door?
Just a number posted on the door that typically will have a little bit of reflectivity. So at night, if there's lights, it'll kind of shine.
So it's supposed to be reflective while it's on the door?
Yeah, that's generally the best practice.
But is it reflective in state code or just the number?
In state code does not mention this portion. That's in NFPA, I believe, that covers putting those numbers on there.
Okay. So as for like the numbers on your exterior walls, do they have to be actually numbers that you purchased, or can you put a paper up there that's got a number on it?
Doesn't really cover that. You theoretically, you could put a piece of paper up there. Obviously, it wouldn't last very long. So the best practice is to do like a vinyl sticky number, and then of a certain size.
I would agree, but if we're currently in violation, I would rather have a sticky note up there with a number on it.
Yes,
Saying
that's,
what room
that's
it
the
is.
goal. Yeah, that's what we work toward, and as we go around and look at schools, we definitely point that out to people and have them fix it.
So they have to have it on exterior doors and windows for room numbers. So if I'm going around the outside of the building, if I've got a room, the window says number 1, that's that room number for that.
Yes, it should correspond to the inside door number of the building.
And we can put it on the inside of the window facing outward.
Yeah.
Which would then would not be in weather because it's on the inside of the building.
Right, so you could reverse it and stick it to the inside. That way it'd be a little bit more weatherproof. And then you want it to be of a good size where you can see it from a distance also.
Then first responders get a copy of every individual school's plan, their floor
Yes.
plan.
Yep. Every year they are required to update that and provide that to their first responders.
That's including like volunteer fire departments as well.
Yes, it should.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further questions? All right, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Any other business before the committee? Chair recognizes Senator Roberts for a motion.
I move we adjourn.
Senator moves that we adjourn. All in favor can go, and those that don't want to can stay in the room.